patrons and subscribers, welcome back to the new show. My name's Random Rob, and today we're going to talk about Peter Hyams' 1978 NASA conspiracy thriller Capricorn 1. Hyams worked on the Apollo 11 broadcast, and he mused ironically to himself at one point, there's only one camera filming all of this. What if it's not real? He wrote a script for the film that would eventually become Capricorn 1 in 1972, but studios weren't interested. However, in the wake of the Watergate scandal, conspiracy films became all the rage, and the film would go into production in 1977, funded primarily through Sir Lou Grade of ITC Productions. While Capricorn 1 was not a critical success, it did connect with audiences. Today the film is regarded as a cult classic, and if not on the A list of 70s conspiracy theory films, it's definitely a solid B. So here are my 5 things you need to know about this faked Mars landing thriller. Number 1, birth of a conspiracy theory. This is really the elephant in the room with this picture. Capricorn 1 definitely contributed to the idea that the Apollo moon landings were faked in some subconscious, elemental way. And not simply because of the obvious conspiracy plot, but also the film's iconic imagery of unmarked helicopters, with their black-clad pilots wearing no insignia. I don't really have much to say about the conspiracy theory of the lunar landings being a hoax. I thought the high-resolution photographs of the lunar surface showing the remains of the Apollo missions taken by the Japanese years ago was pretty compelling evidence it actually happened. Unless, of course, the Japanese are in on it too. I'll never forget when whoever the guy was who was promoting the lunar landing hoax about a decade ago, that moment when he got up in Buzz Aldrin's face and told him that he and the other astronauts were all cowards, and Aldrin decked him. I thought that hit was deserved. You know, I don't have a problem with conspiracy theories like this as fantasy, as, fodder to make a film. I think that sort of thing is fun. But to take it seriously, one, it's an insult to everybody who worked and sacrificed to make it happen. And also just the idea that the United States wasn't capable of it somehow. That it was easier to fake it by somehow securing the silence of the, tens of thousands of people who worked on the lunar landings. It's just dumping on some of the brightest and the best who did something that people thought would be impossible. So, no, definitively I don't put any stock in that conspiracy theory, and I don't believe Capricorn 1 is anything other than a fun diversion. Number 2, help from NASA. Producer Paul Lazarus had some connections with NASA and actually got permission to use a mock-up lunar lander and command module, as well as helping to create the Mars set in the film. I still think it's remarkable today how accurate the Mars set looks compared to the images of Mars that were sent back by the Viking landers. I think part of it has to do with the fact that there's such a uniformity of terrain on the Martian surface that creating a simple forced perspective actually looks fairly accurate. Now, despite NASA's help, there's still obvious errors. For one, the astronauts are seen entering the rocket at about 30 minutes till launch. In real life, they would have been strapped in hours before, probably the evening before. When James Brolin's character Brubaker descends the ladder on the Martian surface right after they've landed, there's already a television camera on the surface to film him. And the most obvious error that the lander shown in the film is a mock-up of the Apollo lunar excursion module, which was only designed to work in 1/6 gravity and would certainly crumple like a tin can if it had tried an actual landing on Mars. Yet even despite these errors, having actual NASA equipment still lends an air of authenticity to the film that you just wouldn't have otherwise. And you have to consider it was really a different era, that NASA would be willing to lend equipment and have their name involved in a film in which they were the ostensible bad guys. That NASA's administration had enough of a sense of humor to do the film really says a lot about the character of the organization. They were being good sports. The thinking probably was, hey, it's just a movie. People know better. Number 3, most successful indie film of 1978. Capricorn 1 did well in theaters, making back $12 million on its original budget of $5. I think it's ironic now to look back at criticisms from the time, which cited the film as being very excessive in terms of expense and effects and whatnot, when I think a modern audience would say, what effects? I myself saw Capricorn 1 3 times in the theater when I was a kid. It's the only film I've ever seen 3 times in a theater. And it was a crowd pleaser. When Telly Savalas, Elliot Gould, and James Brolin are escaping from the unmarked helicopters as they're flying around Red Rock Canyon, and they release the crop dusting chemicals into the oncoming helicopters, causing them to crash, everyone was jumping up and cheering, including me. Peter Hyams said at the time when audiences were screening the film, he heard people cheering, and he started crying because he had finally made that connection with the audience. And a studio man walked up to him and said something to the effect of, "You're going to have a whole lot of new friends tomorrow. You better get used to it." Number 4, Carter and Mondale. While Capricorn 1's crazy conspiracy plot certainly contributed to its appeal, it's also helpful to see that the film reflected certain attitudes towards the Carter administration. For one, the fact that the president does not attend the launch is discussed in the film. The vice president shows up but isn't actually that interested in the space program. This is somewhat accurate of Vice President Walter Mondale, who had also served in the government's investigation of the Apollo 1 tragedy. And Mondale was the one committee member who had been tipped about the Phillips brief, which was a report that NASA had tried to suppress about problems with contracting and construction that had been written in 1965. NASA finally brought that report forward, although they said it didn't have any impact on their decision making. But Mondale went on record later claiming that NASA had been evasive, talked down to the members of the government, and that in general he wasn't happy at all knowing that NASA had buried negative reports. This, in fact, has led to a public perception, in part helped by the TV series From the Earth to the Moon, in which Mondale is portrayed as an anti-NASA politician. Although the facts would seem to indicate he was more worried about corruption than he was about the wastefulness of the space program. And as for Carter, I think it says something about his administration that a film depicting a fraud being perpetrated by NASA was something the public was willing to watch a movie of under his watch. And one other thing, and I really didn't notice until I just rewatched it now, the taped speech that they play back from the Martian set of the president really does sound like a Carter speech. The wording, the inflections, the pauses, it's very Carter. And number 5, the scene that Fight Club ripped off. Anyone who knows Fight Club and loves that movie are fond of the scenes where Ed Norton dishes on the impermanence and falsity of travel culture. The observations about the soap with the wrapper around it, the cup with the wrapper around it, the single serving culture. Well, I would direct those fans to watch Capricorn 1 for Elliot Gould's first appearance on screen, where he's a reporter waiting for a press briefing with the wife of one of the astronauts. And he makes a speech to actress Karen Black. That's not verbatim from Fight Club, but it is pretty damn close. Check it out. So, do I think Capricorn 1 still holds up? For the reasons I've stated, yes. I think it's a wonderful oddity of an indie picture. I think the participation of NASA raises the bar. I also think this film features some of Peter Hyams' best screenwriting. All of the dialogue between Elliot Gould and Karen Black is really funny. The scene where James Brolin talks about, is it worth preserving America if we have to lie to do it, I think is just a great speech in any movie. It features a great piece of stunt driving and one of the most dangerous aerial chase scenes that had ever been filmed at the time, with the two OH-6 Cayuse helicopters chasing the Red Stearman biplane. In almost every shot, they are either flying dangerously close to one another or dangerously close to the stunt plane that was filming them, or dangerously close to the ground and the rock faces in Red Rock Canyon. Veteran stunt pilot Frank Tallman, who worked for decades in Hollywood as a stunt pilot before his death in 1978, did say the Capricorn 1 was the most dangerous bit of flying he ever had to do on film. And you can definitely see it. Yeah, I love Capricorn 1. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's not meant to be taken seriously. So what are some of your favorite crazy conspiracy movies? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you heard, please press the like button and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron of the new show. I could use your help. Alright, this is Random Rob, signing off till next time for the new show. Be excellent, and take care.
The new show is made possible by generous support from viewers like Tony, Arnell, Skipnick, Christopher, Marion, Eric, and B. Thank you so much for your support.